Awesome. All right, welcome everyone. Where we're going to be diving in is continuing our journey in step 4 and talking very specifically about fears. So if you have your book to hand, let's grab it, let's dive in. We'll be talking at the very, very bottom of page 67. You don't have to feel like this is exciting, but one of the things that we learned last week is we were going through resentments. We were looking at the 4th column where we illuminate what are our mistakes, where we illuminate what is blocking us from a power that is greater than ourselves. And we saw where we had done the things that we were upset that other people had done. We illuminated where we made decisions based on self, which later put us in a position to be hurt. We illuminated where we had been selfish, where we had been dishonest, where we had been self-seeking, and where we had been afraid. And as we dive in on the bottom of page 67, we're going to see that fear is something that undercuts each and every resentment that we have, which means I got to get some freedom from it. I can't stay there. So bottom of page 67, very bottom paragraph, notice the word fear, bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Miss Jones, the employer, and the wife. And it's referencing the example that we saw on page 67. You don't have to bounce there, but if you're like, who's Mr. Brown? Which I love, because as I mentioned last week, my mom's got that mug that says Mr. Brown needs to get his ass kicked. Oh, that's who, you know. So it says, this short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. So fear is something that touches every aspect of our lives. There's not an aspect of my life that is not affected by or touched by fear. But I hope fear's not a big deal or anything. I hope fear not touching every aspect of my life isn't going to be a problem. Let's find out. It says, it was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. So this fear being an evil and corroding thread. Corroding is to eat away. And the fabric of our existence being shot through with it. I'm gonna do a screen share. Well, I'm gonna do more than one, but right now I'm gonna do one. To be shot through, it's a technique that they developed with like silk. And basically, I'm oversimplifying the process. That what happens is one color of the fabric, horizontal, is one color and vertical is another. And what that does is it creates this iridescent. And if you look at the dress, it's made with this silk, and we see this iridescent where it is blue, but every time we see the blue, we also see the pink. And that is what our life is like with fear. You see, I can't look at any area of my life and not see fear. But the difference between my life and that silk dress is that the thread of fear is corrosive. To corrode or to be corrosive is that it eats away and it erodes. And that's not good news. Lynn was lovely. She knew I haven't been feeling well. And so she sent me this blanket. It's got cows. Now imagine, because I am a 30-something-year-old woman, emotional support cow. But imagine that half of the threads in this blanket was corrosive. We're going to see some holes in this thing pretty quickly, and eventually it's not going to exist anymore. And we think about our life, and we think about the things that are worthwhile in our life. Is it not true that fear ate away? That it eroded, that it corroded, that it took the joy out of everything in my life, and there was not an aspect of my life that was not colored with that hue of fear. And then it says, it set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. And when I get overtired, I like to go on rants. And I remember going on a rant with my best friend. It was like 3 a.m. We stayed up too late. And I'm like, you know why trains are dangerous? Just going on a whole thing about trains. But genuinely, what makes a train dangerous is that once it gets moving, it is incredibly difficult to stop. once I get that locomotion of fear rocking and rolling in my life, it is incredibly difficult to put the brakes on it. And often what fear looks like in my life is that obsession about a situation. I'm replaying it again and again, and what's it going to be, and trying to figure out every outcome. And that's like the little, the tracks of the locomotion, the little, I know it doesn't have wheels, but you know, that where it gets moving. And I can't stop it. It doesn't come to a sudden stop. And it says, which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. And this is rude. It's rude. It says, but did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Did not I set up this fear? Rude, expecting me to see that, especially just after I illuminated where I've been at fault in all these resentments. You want me to keep doing that? Yep, and that's what we're going to do. It says, sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. See, what does fear take from me? Fear takes from me not just the shoplifting that happens with a lot of people in early sobriety. You know, we put down the booze and we pick up the sticky fingers. That is very common. We're not talking about that, but it steals from us goals, opportunity, hopes, dreams. It robs from me the present moment. It robs from me the ability to be okay in my own skin. It robs from me relationships, and opportunities, goals, dreams, all of that. It seems to cause more trouble. So now, what do? I've got to get free of it. So here's the direction. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our fears on paper, even if I don't have a resentment towards the fears. And I will screen share. There we are. And so what we're going to do is we're going to notice that our fears, the piece of paper is formatted very similarly to the resentments. We've got 3 columns at the top and 1 big column at the bottom. Now, I'll give you a little spoilers. Column 3, we're going to do a lot more writing in column 3 for fears than we did resentments. But just like we did resentments, and by the way, I will also make sure when I've wrapped up that I put this in the chat and the step documents in the chat so you can have all of them. And I'll put them in the WhatsApp chat after as well. So if you're like, oh no, how do I get a copy of this? Just hang around. I'll make sure I get it for you. So what it is going to be, just as much as it was 1 resentment per page, as it is going to be 1 fear per page. And so what I will do is I will write my fear of rejection and I will flip the page. And I will write my fear of abandonment and I will flip the page. And I'll write my fear of dying alone and I'll flip the page. And I'll write my fear of being single, flip the page. Fear of being in a relationship, flip the page. Fear of sex, flip the page. Fear of intimacy, flip the page. Didn't know those were different. Took some inventory to see that. You know, fear of success, flip the page. Fear of failure, flip the page. And so we're going to get down all those fears. But if you're wondering, okay, where can I get a good list, or where can I get a good idea of where my fears come from? And you can look up lists and you can look up fear prompts. Those do exist. But the best place to go is my resentment inventory. Because I just illuminated all these fears that underpinned each and every one of my resentments. Well, isn't it important to get free of those? So what I always recommend with sponsees is that they rip out a piece of paper or grab an envelope or, a scrap piece of paper, and they go back through their resentments and they write any of the fears. You don't need to write duplicates. So if you have fear of rejection 3 or 4 times, you just got to write it once. But grab all of those fears that we found in our resentments. And of course we can add more. And of course the ones that come to our mind, and of course the ones that come to our heart, we can add those. And when we talk about fears, we're really looking at 2 specific types of, or 1 specific type of fear that's broken down into 2 categories. We're not so much looking at our fears of snakes or spiders, but we can. We're looking more at self-centered fears. And those self-centered fears can be put into 2 categories. The first category is I'm not going to get something that I want. That's the first category. The second category is I'm going to lose something that I have. Now, in that I'm going to lose something that I have is also the I've done something I shouldn't have, and I'm going to be found out. But ultimately, those two fears. And you'll notice when we talk about self-centered fear, what is the core? What is the crux? It is self. And so what we're going to do, column 1, is we are going to write all of those fears. So fear of rejection, flip the page. Fear of abandonment, flip the page. And keep going until we get all of those fears down on paper. That's column 1. Now it says we asked ourselves why we had them. That is going to be column 2. Why do I have this fear? Now, because rejection and abandonment are everybody's two first fears, pretty well always, I'll use the example of fear of rejection. And so why do I have this fear? Because it's happened before. Because it means that people don't like me. Because it's painful. Because I'm going to die alone. And what that second column can do is illuminate additional fears. Fear of dying alone, fear of being unworthy, fear of not being liked, fear of emotional pain. So that can also illuminate, if I'm having trouble finding fears that I can add, that's another way that I can see that. Now, I'll share with you, I had a sponsor, this was a number of years ago, and I remember this very vividly. She suggested I do a because fear inventory. There was a situation where I was gripped with fear. Now, I do these 4 columns that I'm showing, that I'm talking about, but I just want to share something with you. And I remember she suggested it, and I was really excited because it was a way of doing inventory that I heard Mark Houston had done, and I was like, I'm here for that. And so that way of doing inventory is like, I have a fear of rejection, and then I write because it means people won't like me. And then I write, because I need people to like me to be okay. Because my sense of value and worth comes from others. Because I don't have a sense of value and worth. Because. And I'll tell you what all of my becauses ended up with. Because I had a sense of separateness from God. And hey, that's just my inventory. I encourage you to take your own. Although if you're taking mine, hey, that's free anyways. and that was a really cool experience that I had. And I brought that inventory. I'll tell you the rest of the story because it's funny. I brought that inventory to her, and she's like, I didn't tell you to do that. And I was like, internally, I'm like, yes, you did. I remember because I got so excited about it. Who gets that jazzed about doing inventory? So that's my little because inventory. So, but for this inventory purpose, what we're just going to do is, why do I have it? Just because this and that and that and that, just get down. Why do I have this fear? And then we'll get into the third column. And it says, wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? And that's what we're going to look at in column 3. How has self-reliance failed me? I'm going to read and then we're going to explain. It says self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Heck, in step 3, we were talking about how me relying on me trying to run the show, me trying to control the outcome, man, that didn't work. I had to get fired from that position because I ran my life into bankruptcy. And so, of course, self-reliance isn't going to work. But when we illuminate that further in our fear inventory, man, I can't tell you how helpful it is. It says self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence. I can assure you that was not me. I do not, listen, I've got some audacity, that self-confidence audacity. I never met her. I don't got it. But some people had that. And it says, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. And so what we're going to do is, when we get done all of column 1, when we get done, and then we do all of column 2, we then go into column 3. And what we're going to write on is, how has self-reliance failed me in terms of this fear? Now, if this is our first ever inventory, one of the things that we can do is we can take ourselves back to our most alcoholic, booze-fueled, self-reliant bender and see how that has failed us in terms of that fear, and we can move forward. And what we're looking at is how has me, relying on me, created this fear? Made this fear worse, brought this fear into fruition. Now, conceptually, this is a part of the inventory process that everyone I work with sort of is like, you got to get your head around it and then it flows. So if you're feeling a little confused, don't you worry about it. One of the things that we're going to do is I'm going to give the example of fear of rejection. And then we're going to go and talk about the fourth column and the promise and the prayer. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to ask for people to share some fears in the chat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those fears through the fear columns, and we're going to see how this applies. And I promise you'll get a hang of it. So how has self-reliance failed me in terms of my fear of rejection? Well, when I am peeing on your carpet, sleeping with your husband, and stealing your car because I'm on a 3-week bender, that sort of alcoholic behavior does not ingratiate itself to sociability and friendship. You're like, yeah, of course. When I am active in my alcoholism and when I am on self-reliance, eventually I will drink again. So when I am active in my alcoholism, it is only a matter of time before I drink again. And when I am drunk, of course, I'm more likely to be somebody that is going to be rejected. But what else? Well, I don't know about you, but I am codependent as heck. And I will actively and intentionally seek my sense of value and worth from what I think other people think about me. And what happens is in that orientation, if you reject me, I'm emotionally shattered. But also I'm an emotional suck where it's, I need you to like me. 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 And the whole orientation about that relationship is what I can get, which is draining. And it makes the relationship not sustainable. I'm also somebody that like, hey, when I'm on self-will, I'm stepping on toes. I'm acting out in these defects, some of these that we illuminated in our inventory process. And I can't see that I stepped on your toes. And I can't see that I caused problems. And even if I have a glimpse of that awareness, I don't know how to make it right. And so I deteriorate relationships. Maybe I isolate and avoid. So I don't even have to deal with relationships at all. Maybe I self-sabotage or blow them up. So I can, blow it up before I feel hurt and rejected. I'm also somebody that like, hey, when we get sober, what feels comfortable is unhealthy relationships, because that's all I know. And I will seek out unhealed people because it feels comfortable. And those patterns of rejection, where I'm more likely to be rejected, more likely to be hurt, they perpetuate. And like, there's more, but those are some like easy peasy little ones that we can see for how has self-reliance failed me in terms of my fear of, I'll just throw out another one, that we jump into relationships too quickly. Doesn't matter if it's friendship or romance or whatever. We don't use discernment. We just all in, and also when we engage in things like judgment, criticism and gossip. That sort of behavior ingratiates more people that are more likely to do that. We're more likely to be rejected, etc. So that is just one example of how self-reliance has failed us. And so what we'll do is we'll see, okay, self-reliance, that's not working. That's not a solution. Now keep in mind some fears. We got a whole couple paragraphs to go, but I'm just prepping you. So that when I'm like, who's got some fears? I know, you guys are very brave, but we're going to find out. Actually, we're going to read courage and fear do live together. So think of some. So it says, perhaps there is a better way. We think so. For we are now on a different basis of life, way of life. Hey, when did I decide I was going to live a whole new way of life? Step 3, that was the third step decision. We're seeing some callbacks to that third step. And it says the basis of trusting and relying upon God. Again, that was the decision I made in step 3. But keep in mind, we're right now halfway through the 4-step process. So if you are here, if you're physically here writing inventory and you're like, I don't know if I feel like I'm trusting and relying on this power, the purpose of the 12 steps is to get me to trust and rely on this power. That's how I do it. Because I'm somebody, man, I need it spelled out for me. I need it simple. Because I know, you guys, clear cut, you're on it. But little miss, yeah, Raymond just put it, yeah. So thank you, Raymond. So I will go for personal fears, but if not, I'm just going to grab from Raymond's list. Super appreciate it. We got options. Oh, because I know you guys are very brave and don't have any fears. But that's how I trust God. That's how I rely on God. That's how I get my life out of my hands. That's what these 12 steps do. And it says we are in the world, we trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. I am finite. What does that mean? I have a limit. I have an edge. I have an end. Man, I am deeply flawed and frequently wrong. Like that's who I am. That's how I show up. And instead of relying on me, I have the opportunity to rely on infinite God. I shared this story quite a bit, but I was working with a sponsee, and she was starting to get a little complacent. And if I'm wondering if I'm getting complacent, a telltale sign, other than like I've stopped doing the work, but a telltale sign of complacency is that everybody else is doing it wrong and they're so annoying. That's how you know. And she was in that place where everything was annoying and everybody was annoying, especially me. And she was like, ugh, Paige, why is it always like joy and God with you? Which you can tell she was not having a good day. And I wasn't helping. But she's like, why can't my love be enough? Like, why can't my courage be enough? Why can't my whatever it is be enough? And I'll use the example of love. And I was like, okay, well, she has a niece and a nephew and family. I'm like, it's pretty easy to love them. You can love them, and you can probably love them with all your heart, right? And she's like, yeah. And then I mentioned, and I didn't even go too far in this thought experiment. I went one step of, and that girl that's annoying you at the meeting, that we bumped up against my finite limits. You know what I mean? But there is an infinite power. So we trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. Another way I describe it is like I'm trying to figure everything out. And it's like I'm looking through like Victorian era keyhole, because those are a little bit bigger, in a room that's in darkness. And I've got like a little candle to try to look through that room. But where's God? God's on the other side of that door with the light on and can see everything. I don't have that full vision. So it says we trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. Why it doesn't work? It didn't work. In fact, we wrote out how me relying on me did not work. It made the fear worse. It brought the fear into fruition. And it says we're in the world to play the role he assigns. Hey, when did I agree to do that? Step 3. Step 3, when I got my pink slip for management position to my life, and I signed my little spiritual employment contract. I'm going to work for this power. This power is going to be in charge, and I'm going to do what I think this power would have me. And here's a promise. So if you're highlighting promises in different colors, get out your pink or whatever. I know some people like promises in pink. Or don't. I mean, hey, all of this is consensual. You don't have to do nothing. But this is a promise. And just like every promise we have in this book, the promise comes with terms and conditions. It doesn't materialize out of nowhere, although it kind of does. I do have to take the course of action to bring about the promises. So, to experience this 4th step promise, what do I need to do? It says, just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us. Not that we know, but we think that we're doing our best. There's this prayer, it's the Thomas Merton prayer. And it talks about, I may not know the way I'm going, I may not know the road ahead, but I just hope that I'm doing, and I'm paraphrasing it, and I shouldn't paraphrase it. I literally say it every day, twice a day, and my brain doesn't have it right now. But it's that idea that I don't even have to know. I just have to be trying to do what I think God's will is and humbly rely on him. Does he enable us to match calamity with serenity? And that is a powerful promise. Calamity being matched with serenity. What is calamity? Because we don't use that word much, although I feel like Calamity Jane could be like a nickname for me. Like Calamity Page. But that word calamity, a modern translation that might be really helpful is the word trauma. So those traumatic, awful, painful things that happen to us, that gets matched with serenity. And I promise you it is a serenity that is not my own. It is not my serenity that gets matched with that calamity. That's what, that chaos and that painful, debilitating, like that's what we're talking about. And that gets to be matched with serenity. And that is my experience. That is my experience. This isn't a theory. This isn't an idea. That would be nice on a Hallmark card, or a Hallmark Christmas movie. I don't know. I don't watch them. But, it's not like an idea or an ideal. It is our lived experience, and that is true for every promise in this book. It is not an idea or an ideal. It is the result of the course of action, and that is powerful because, unfortunately, there are calamities in life. There just are. And not because I'm an alcoholic, not because I got sober. And it's not fair because that's what it feels like. I'm sober now. Things should be smooth sailing. It is because I'm a human being. And a part of the human experience is grief and loss and pain. It is illness and death. Like it is. It is. And those are hard, and that is real, and that is life. That is what this is. And so just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us and humbly rely on him, does he enable us to match calamity with serenity. And that is powerful, and that is real. It goes on, 68, 1, 2, 3, third paragraph. I counted. It says, we never apologize for depending upon our Creator. And how wonderful that is. We don't go to apologize. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. And those were some of the barriers that I brought to the second step, things that I thought were barriers. That, it's weak. It's not cool. Because I was, really into being cool, despite the fact that I'd never been cool in my life. And I'm going to hang out in a church basement with a bunch of other alcoholics. And now's the time. I gotta be cool and impress all y'all. And I sure as heck wasn't cool wetting my pants behind the dumpster. Like a lady, pinkies up. And what happens is our lived experience is that spirituality is not the way of weakness. Our lived experience is that it is the way, it goes on to say, paradoxically, it is the way of strength. It takes courage and strength. And it's not a blind courage or like an abject strength. It is courage and strength to continue on this path, to continue on this way of life, especially when it is hard. But we know from our lived experience when we do that, it enables us to move through difficult, painful situations, not perfectly, not as if they didn't happen, but with a resolve and a connection and a deeper peace that is not, I won't say our own, but it's not my own. Little Miss Calamity over here. I don't on my own power radiate peace. I radiate anxiety and chaos. Also a deep sense of misery. Because I'm just fun. When I'm disconnected, it is unpleasant to be with, and I would know because I'm spending time with me, and it gets a little much. So it says, paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages means that the verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. And if you've ever heard that, there's a saying that we hear quite a bit. And I don't want, if somebody's like, I really like that saying, I don't want to discount it, but I'll tell you my experience. There's this saying that fear and faith can't live in the same house. But I don't think that's true. You see, courage can only exist where there is fear. It's not courageous to get out of bed in the morning, unless it is. It's not courageous to come to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, unless it is. You guys know what I'm saying? To have courage, there must be fear. And the absence of fear is not faith. Faith and fear do live in the same house. So if I am afraid, it's not that I'm doing it wrong. What it is there is an opening and an opportunity for faith to come in. All men of faith have courage. All men have faith, have courage. Now, I will go on a little tangent and tell you what I found cannot live in the same house. If you're like, but what can't cohabitate? What are not spiritual roommates? And they are roommates. What is not a spiritual roommate, in my experience, is self-centeredness and serenity. I cannot be wrapped up in the bondage of self and feel that abiding peace of God. I can't be running around in my head. My brain was trying to say rotor-rooting, and I'm like, I don't think that's even a word, but that's what was happening there. My brain can't be like weed whacking all these little resentments that keep growing back. You know what I mean? Trying to figure it out. No, it doesn't. I can't be mad at you and feel the presence of God. And so that serenity and self-centeredness, what I've found is those do not cohabitate, but fear and faith absolutely do. They can and they do live together. So if you're afraid you're not doing it wrong, again, it is an entryway for faith to come in. And it says they trust their God. Now here's the thing. When we talk about faith, what is faith? What does that mean? And I believe it was Evelyn Underhill. I try to give credit when I remember things. It might not have been Evelyn Underhill. I listen to a lot of spiritual books, like old ones. So like just some random stuff. So I don't always remember where things come in my little noodle. So if it wasn't Evelyn, don't worry about it. But there's, she just wrote on spiritual experiences. She had a whole book on it. She was a contemporary of William James. That's why I'm referencing her, because I thought she had the quote, and I'm like, as soon as I said it, I'm like, I'm not sure. But regardless, there's the description of what is faith. Faith is an open hand, willing to grasp a new experience. That is faith. Faith is not certainty. An open hand willing to reach toward the real, that is faith. My hand is open and I'm just trying to have a new experience. That is faith. But what happens is with faith, we start this process with hope. Maybe your stupid little higher power could help. Maybe. That's where we start. Some of us a little bit more open, some of us a little bit more closed, but that's hope. That's what that is. But with action, with consistency, that grows into faith, where I'm willing to have that hand open, I'm willing to reach, I'm willing to seek. But with consistency, that faith builds to trust. Trust. That's what we get to do. We get to build to trust. And so it goes on. It says they trust their God. That trust does not come from just hoping and wishing, but with action, with consistency. Think about anyone in your life that you trust. Listen, I'm hoping you're not lending money out willy-nilly. That newcomer that comes in, oh yeah, there's $50. That's a terrible idea for so many reasons. There's not been a demonstration of trust. But that trust is built through those demonstrations, those actions. It says they trust their God. They never apologize for God instead. So I don't have to apologize. I don't have to, and it's saying that twice. I don't got to apologize. I get to have my lived experience. And it goes on to say instead, and I love this, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. And if you're familiar with, it's sometimes called the Step 11 prayer. It's the St. Francis prayer. It's found in Step 11 in the 12 and 12, where it talks about, Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love. And it goes on. That St. Francis prayer, that is what I am trying to be. And that's what it is describing. We let him demonstrate through us what we can do. And this is something that it might not feel practical, but I promise you it is. Whenever I'm scared to do things, something else came to mind. I'll give you something else that's a little practical as well. But whenever I'm scared to take any action, spiritual or otherwise, I don't actually have to do it. What do I have to do? I just got to get me out of the way and let this power flow through me. I'm not even the one that has to do it. Just me out of the way. And if you're like, how do I get me out of the way? How do I let God do it? That's where this inventory comes in. That's what helps me do it. And that's what we're trying to do in these 12 steps, to clear that channel. So that infinite love, that infinite grace, honesty, trust, compassion, infinite power can flow through us. That's all I'm trying to do. That's all I'm trying to be. Now, the thing my little brain grabbed a hold of is whenever somebody's nervous to do something in Alcoholics Anonymous, I have this as a little reminder. So if you're ever nervous to share at a meeting, chair a meeting, share your story, facilitate a 12-week, it's going to be more than 12, but facilitate a big book study or a step series. Now, I didn't talk when I got here for like the first 6 or 9 months. So listen, there are changes abound. But whenever you're nervous to do something in Alcoholics Anonymous, just remember that each and every one of us has at one point in our lives, maybe not even the so distant past, been complete and utter failures. Otherwise, we wouldn't show up at AA. And we've all pissed our pants. We all have. We all know what it's like to wake up with a wet bed, because whoopsies, the wet bed and somebody we don't realize. And so it's a gentle reminder that whatever you do in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know what I mean? We all wet our pants. And hey, we're even on Zoom. So if you wet your pants, you keep the camera up, we can't see it. So you're all good. So there's no reason to have any fear here at AA. Oh, so that's why I had that. No, we're going to tell that story. So it says, instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. Now it says we ask him. And that's a prayer. Anytime in this book it says we ask or to ask, that is a prayer. So we ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. What he would have us be. And I'm Canadian, so I like to say, God, please remove my fear. I throw in a please. I just do. And whenever we'll go back to the columns, but I like to say very specifically what the fear is. So in our example, it would be, God, please remove my fear of rejection and direct my attention to what you would have me be. And it says, at once we commence to outgrow fear. So how are we going to do this? Well, that whole paragraph is talking about how can God reliance overcome that fear. So let's go back to the columns. And before we write on the 4th column, just as we did with our resentments, we're going to say the prayer. So God, please remove my fear of rejection and direct my attention to what you would have me be. And in the 4th column, there's going to be, for almost all of our fears, there's going to be 2 levels. The first level is the surface level. And that's going to tell us how we get to that being place. And then for almost every single one of our fears, except fear of relapse, there is going to be a deeper level. And how we get that surface level of how can God reliance overcome this fear, we take what we wrote in the 3rd column and we flip it and we write how. What I mean by that is in column 3, the first thing we said for fear of rejection was that on self-reliance, I'm going to get drunk. Well, how can God reliance overcome this fear? On God reliance, I'm going to work these 12 steps as a way of life like my life depends on it, because it does. And as a result, I will stay sober. And as a result, I'm less likely to pee on your carpet, sleep with your husband, and steal your car. And you're less likely to reject me. And then we also spoke about how we get sober and I get comfortable with unhealthy people. Well, as I rely on God, I'm working these 12 steps and I'm growing and becoming a healthier person. I'm changing and I'm practicing taking these leaps of faith, and I'm going to be more and more comfortable with healthier people. I'm also going to have daily prayer, daily meditation, daily inventory, and I'm going to have practice with this 4 through 9 process. The result of that is I'm going to see if, oh man, I shouldn't have said that thing. Oh man, I stepped on that person's toes. I hurt them. When things pop up, I'm going to do that inventory. I'm going to do it in the 10th step. If I miss it in the 10th, I'm going to do it in the evening review. And I'm going to repair my relationships in the moment. And also the 9th step will give me practical experience repairing and restoring and making right the harms that I've caused. I'm also going to be active and intentionally seeking my sense of value and worth from God. And as a result, I'm going to be channeling that to the people around me. And that's more attractive. People want to be around people that care about other people, that are showing up in a selfless, caring way. I'm also going to be somebody that shows up instead of judging, criticizing, gossiping. I'm going to be lifting others up, pumping their tires. I'm going to be kind, considerate, as the result of these 12 steps is a way of life. And people want to be around that. Instead of isolating and avoiding connections, hey, guess what? I'm going to get some practice. Why? Because I've got to work with others. So I'm going to find some newcomers to work with. I'm going to have a home group. I'm going to get involved in service, and I'm going to build little by slowly these commitments. I'm going to build relationships, and I'm going to practice building trust, and I'm going to do that with my sponsor as we do the 5th step, and my sponsor guides me through the 9th step, and we're going to build that experience. And when I start new relationships, I'm not going to be all or nothing, black or white. I'm going to build trust, connection, communication over time. And I'm going to utilize that discernment that inventory helps me get. And that's just some of the stuff we could write. And I flipped what we wrote in column 3, but the deeper level. And this is powerful. The deeper level is, even if I am rejected, if I rely on God, I will be okay. And I will use that experience to help others. And there's times when I write inventory, I like to write that deeper level as the most extreme version possible, which is to say, even if everybody on earth rejects me, if I rely on God, I will be okay. And I will use that experience to help others. And then they can reject me too. And that helps me to see that deeper level. And so what we'll do is, does anyone, if you wouldn't mind throwing it in the chat, does anyone have a fear that I'll take through the columns? And then, hey, this is like the teacher helping with your homework. So if you got some inventory to write. So and also, just so you know, what I'll do is I have the documents. Fear of the unknown, beautiful. That's the next one I'll do. Fear of not getting unstuck. I love those, and I'll do them. So keep throwing them in, and I'll do as many of them until we can. One of those is the homework. I see that one. Absolutely. So the first one, fear of the unknown. So let me do. I'll bring up the columns just so we can see what I'm talking about. So in column 1, we will do fear of the unknown. Column 2, why do I have this fear? Oops, there we go. Column 2, why do I have this fear? Because I can't control it. I don't know what's going to happen. Because historically, when the unknown has happened, it's been painful and awful. And again, that lack of control. So how has self-reliance failed me? Well, when I rely on self, what happens? Well, when I rely on self, we'll start with, I'm drunk. And when I am drunk, the unknown is sometimes the back of the police car or, the emergency room. So when I am relying on me, I am drinking. And the result of that is the unknown tends to be awful and painful. And I create that because I'm drunk. What's another way that self-reliance has failed me? When we look at this fear of the unknown, what am I often trying to do? I'm trying to control the outcome of things I don't have control of. So I'm rolling around in my head trying to figure out all the options. I'm trying to think of everything. And what does that take me? That takes me out of the present moment. It burns energy. Most of the things that I'm afraid of don't even happen. And one of the things too, so it takes me out of the moment. It takes me out of the here and now. It makes it so that like I'm not enjoying the life that I have. The other thing is I'll avoid change at all costs. I'll drag my feet. I'll overanalyze. I'm sure nobody else has done that. Like procrastinate, put things off. What's another one? Fear of the unknown. Cling to situations that are hurting me. Cling to situations that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt I do not belong in, because I'm afraid of what's going to happen. And then sometimes we hold on so long that change happens to us, and then it gets painful. So let's say the prayer, God, please, you don't have to say please, it's a Canadian thing. God, please remove my fear of the unknown and direct my attention to what you would have me be. So how has self-reliance failed me? Or how can God reliance overcome this fear? Well, the first thing is I'm going to work these 12 steps as a way of life like my life depends on it, because it does. And as a result of that, I'm going to stay sober. And the unknown is going to be, the unknown's going to be less awful, less terrifying. What else is going to happen? Well, as I continue to live this way of life, I'm going to be brought to the here and now. So I'm not living in obsession. And what helps with that is the meditation, the daily inventory, the prayers. And the 10th step is that's going to bring me back to the here and now. And that's the time and place that I live. And I'm not going to burn and waste energy trying to control things that I don't have control over. I'm also going to have a bit of a different vision of things. I'm going to be able to see that, hey, like I can break things down into steps. And I'm going to be able to be more future focused. I'm the worst for like goal setting, because I've literally doubled my life expectancy. I never expected to live this long. And so I'm not good at goal setting. And so we get practice with like having a future and having things to look forward to. Also, one of the things with the fear of the unknown is as we work these 12 steps as a way of life, we're going to be taking those leaps of faith. And I remember when I was new, there was a gentleman, he worked as a skydiving instructor. He's a fun guy. He's still around. And he would say, Paige, everything you want in life is outside of your comfort zone. And I would be like, absolutely not. And I wouldn't say this because, this was my inner monologue. Absolutely not. What I would like is my comfy zone, please and thank you. But what I didn't realize is the more I stayed in that comfort zone, the more that comfort zone shrunk. And what he failed to tell me is every time I took a leap of faith, every time I took a step out of my comfort zone, that comfort zone grows. So from not being able to speak in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous to Vivian has to tell me when to be quiet, that change, we get more and more comfortable. And as we do the 5th step, and we take that leap of faith, we become more comfortable. As every single time we make amends, especially the ones that we are afraid to do, and we don't know how it's going to go, the outcome is in God's hands. We see how it goes, and we build that trust with that higher power. And every time we sit down and work with another alcoholic, we're scared, we're afraid they're not going to like us, all of that. And we build that experience of the unknown. And we build that lived experience that we can trust. And the 3rd step promises it talks about. We begin to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, the hereafter. We were reborn. So even the great unknown. We get to, as we practice approaching sponsees and life with curiosity, we can approach the unknown with curiosity and as an adventure because we know we're not doing it alone. And as we sponsor others, man, we get to see them take these leaps of faith. We get to see them. Like dive into their unknowns, and we get to see it work out again and again and again, and that builds our reliance. But the deeper level is, even if I experience the unknown, and it sucks for a real one. If I rely, that's the clinical term. If I rely on God, I will be okay, and I will use this experience to help others. And so let me go back. So fear of the unknown, fear of not getting unstuck. So that fear that I'm going to stay stuck, that fear that I'm not going to, I might not get to all of them. I'm just doing them in order. So that fear of not getting unstuck. Let's take it through. So column 1, what do I have a fear of? A fear of not getting unstuck. A fear of staying stuck. That's what it is. Why do I have this fear? Maybe that stuck is tied to external things. I've been in this marriage, this job, this situation that just sucks. Maybe and I don't know how to get out of it. Maybe I have this realization that this is not the life that I want to live, and it's painful. And maybe I feel this like deeper complacency, this emotional, spiritual stuckness, this black sludge, and I can't get free of it. And it's painful. Maybe that's why. Listen, I'm just spitballing here. And so how has self-reliance failed me? Well, when we talk about and I'm hitting the beat of if it's our first inventory, we're writing on relapse. But here's the thing. If I am relying on self, I'm not working these 12 steps as a way of life. And I will continue to be stuck in the cycle of alcoholism, drinking again, swearing off, drinking again, swearing off, drinking again. With everything that comes with that, I will be stuck. How has self-reliance failed me in other ways? Complacency. I show up to life complacent in prayer, meditation, amends I need to make, working with others, making meetings, being of service. I am complacent. And maybe that's where we're stuck, but that helps us to be stuck in other areas of our life. We approach being stuck or unstuck in a black or white, all or nothing sort of way. We focus on the outcome. We think we know where we need to go, but we don't know how to get there. So it's I gotta, whatever the unstuck place is, let's say it's in a new job or making this much money or, different relationship. That's what I need. And we focus on that as if that is the solution and we have no way to get there. Again, we can look at trying to control things that are outside of our control. A lot of what I talk about is tied to perfectionism. So we approach ourselves with this black and white perfectionist, all or nothing, and that keeps us stuck. And so we'll say the prayer, God, please remove my fear of never becoming unstuck and direct my attention to what you would have me be. Now, the first thing, we're going to work these 12 steps as a way of life, like our life depends on it, because it does. As a result, we are going to stay sober. And more than that, we're going to have a sex ideal that we take to prayer and to meditation. And if we have other areas of our life that are stuck, we can cultivate a work ideal. We can cultivate a family ideal. We can cultivate these ideals for any area of our life that we take to prayer and meditation on a daily basis. And that helps build that momentum in getting unstuck. Now, I am somebody who, when it comes to the 11th step, I'm incredibly disciplined. Some of you guys know I have not been feeling well. I have been having just a tough go with my health. And I'm not saying those evening reviews have been good, but they've been done. They're not phenomenal, but they've been done. I am a disciplined human being. But with that, I know that I work with a lot of people. I know that sometimes we approach it in an all or nothing sort of way. So on self-reliance, we're not going to ask for help. On God-reliance, I'm going to ask for help. Maybe that looks like accountability. Maybe that looks like body doubling. What I mean by that is sometimes just to get something done, just to start something, I just need somebody to sit near me to help with that accountability. So we're going to ask for that help. One of the things, too, is I often find that we build the steps to change too big. And so when I work with people and we talk about building a daily meditation practice, don't start with 20 minutes a day. You're going to do that maybe once and not do it again. That's how we do. We're human beings. So start with 1 to 2 minutes a day, but do it daily, and that builds momentum. So as we rely on God, we build that momentum. And here's the shift that also happens as we work these 12 steps. We build that momentum. We are no longer focused on the outcome. And that might seem counterintuitive, but the outcome isn't in my hands. I'm not in the results business. That's God's deal. What happens is I focus on God and being of service to others, and that momentum builds. And I find a way. There's that path that was not my path, it was God's path, that I get led on as I take this course of action. And as I do this, I can also, when we're stuck, and this ties into the deeper level, but whenever I work with people and they've gotten off the path, they're stuck spiritually, I talk about going through things like grief or pain or health problems. I talk about being really present to that experience. So not trying to numb and avoid, but be present to that experience. Be present to what works. Be present to what isn't working. And the reason is because if I'm not going through stuff alone. So if I can go through this feeling of being stuck and getting unstuck, using prayer, using meditation, using inventory, using help from others, building those momentums, using those things to the power of God to get unstuck, I then have that experience I can use to help others. That's why I know all these things, And that's that deeper level. Even if I'm stuck, even if I'm stuck. There's that saying, grow where you're planted. Even if I'm stuck, if I rely on God, I will be okay, and I will use that experience to help others. And I'm talking as somebody who, I have been stuck in situations I shouldn't have been. And I look back and I'm like, I stayed there for years longer than I should have. So that's I'm aware of the time. So that's all I have time for right now, but I can always stick around after. And before I turn it over to Vivian, what I'll say is with column 3 and column 4, I work with a lot of people, and sometimes people, when they're writing on their inventory on their own, they would ask me for help, and I would voice to text suggestions for column 3 and column 4. And then what happened is I was voice to texting fear of rejection 50 million times. And I'm like, why don't I just put all of this in a Word document? And so what I have, and I'll put it in the chat, is I have 128 pages. Don't print it off unless you're not paying for the ink. 128 pages of examples of column 3 and column 4. You can use it. You can search it, Control F, Command F, search function to find some of the fears that you're looking for. And I'll stick around if people wanted some help with the fears they have. So that's it for me. I'll turn it over to you, Vivian.